Today we have Nurlin Salleh, the Managing Director and Partner of BCG Malaysia. Hi, Nurlin.
Hello.
Welcome to Leaders Unplugged.
Thank you. Thanks for having me here. Happy to join you this morning.
Right. So, Nurlin, you are the Managing Director and Partner of BCG Malaysia.
That's right.
And I'm sure the role that you have is quite a huge one. And you've been managing the firm. And what is it like being a Managing Director and Partner of BCG Malaysia?
Oh wow. Thanks for the question. Maybe I give a little bit of context and background to myself, and then I can tell you a little bit about the role that I take on. So as you mentioned, I work for BCG. I've been with BCG for I think close to 18 years. I think if you look back, you can figure out how old I am. But close to 18 years. And I made Managing Director and Partner of BCG in 2021, I think. And then I took over the role of the Head of BCG Malaysia not long after that. So I've been in the role for about 2 years or so now. I think as I grew through the ranks within BCG itself, I mean, I started off, pretty much somewhat fresh out of sort of undergrad. I joined actually Procter & Gamble before that for like a year before I actually joined BCG. And I obviously went through the ranks in BCG from associate all the way up to managing director and partner. And so, going through all the different paths and the promotions to get there took a while, right? But obviously once you're able to achieve that, it was wonderful. But obviously all of that comes with a lot of responsibilities, right? Because you are part of a global partnership, which has, a number of expectations, right? So taking on that role of managing director and partner was already quite substantial. But then when they said, hey, do you want to take over the role of the head of Malaysia? That was a pleasant surprise, something that I always had hoped that I'd be able to achieve. And really ecstatic that, they had thought of me to take on that role itself. But obviously the responsibilities that came with that is also quite substantial in that regard. We have like 200 plus people in the office. We are actually the first office established in Southeast Asia.
Wow.
And Southeast Asia now we're fully established with 6 different countries. So we're quite a substantial. We play quite a critical role in the whole landscape of Southeast Asia as well.
So you moved from Procter & Gamble. And why consulting?
Oh gosh. So that's a great question. So I didn't mention that my background is actually in engineering. So I'm actually an engineer by education background. So a manufacturing engineer, just to be a bit specific. And if you ask me why I chose to study engineering, I think the typical view is like, oh, if you do a course, you must practice that later on. But actually the reality was I took on engineering because I wanted to, because it was a combination of subjects I was good at. And then once I finished my degree, I always knew that I didn't want to be an engineer. I always knew that I wanted to move more towards the business side of things, right? But from a manufacturing engineering background, I thought, I received an offer from Procter & Gamble, which was a market planner, which is a role that actually sits between the business side and the factory and the plant. So you're sort of the liaison between the two, which I thought was a great way to start, because then at least you have a good view of both sides of things.
Right.
I was there for just about a year in the UK. And after that, I realized that it wasn't quite what I wanted to do. I think I had greater ambitions and the progression was not as fast as I had hoped. So then I had a number of friends who were in consulting and they were like, why don't you just, apply to our companies? And I thought, okay, I'll give that a go. I actually didn't think I would get it. I thought I'd just give it a go. And I gave it a go and it got to the point where I actually received an offer. And then I said to myself, why not? Why not give it a try and see whether this is an area which would be of interest to me? And yeah, 18 years later, I'm still here.
That's a long trial period.
It's quite.
It's been 18 years
Yeah.
and we're still on trial.
Yeah. I mean, you could argue, yes, that I'm still considering it.
So now consulting is always it's about creating value for clients. Right? And you have clients of various sizes, right? And from various sectors. And to meet their needs, I think you need a team of very calibered people, right? So how do you build that team? I mean, how do you see talents for BCG?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's a great question because, fundamentally in our line of work as management consultants, our biggest and greatest assets are our people, right? We're not like, other companies where it could be the IP that you have or, some of the assets that you build. Our company is fundamentally, we are only as strong as the people that we have. So the talent that we bring in, the talent that we nurture and cultivate and grow is really important to the success of the company. And when you talk about how do we build that team and how do we grow that team, as I said, first point is bringing in the right kind of people with the capabilities, the skill sets, and the qualities that we need, and we bring them in through many different pools, whether it's through undergrad or whether it's through like those who come from the graduate scheme or experience or lateral hires that bring real specific expertise that we need and want for us to grow. And through that, once they come into the firm, the learning and development that we provide, the training that we provide, the career development opportunities that we provide is something that we really look and watch carefully. We manage carefully. And we then are always focused on growth and progression. So in a company like BCG, how do I explain this? You never get to just be comfortable. Right? As soon as you're comfortable, they push you to the next level and they push you to the next level. So progression is very fast. Within 1 to 2 years, you're already promoted to the next level and they give you more and more responsibilities at each time. And then you may argue, hey, you made it to managing director and partner. Surely it's smooth sailing for you then. Not at all. When you make it to managing director and partner, there are different levels within that as well. And then the expectations are still there. And each time, as I said, things are a little bit more comfortable, they give you more. But it's fantastic because you're always constantly being pushed. You're always learning and growing. You're always progressing, right? So for the individual and the person who wants to really try to fulfill the most, ambition, really try to push themselves and build their capabilities, it's a great place to be. It can be tiring. I'm not gonna lie about that, but it's great because you can really stretch yourself. And sometimes, like for somebody like me, I'm like, okay lah, cukup lah. I think I've achieved enough. They're like, no, actually, you can do more. Nah. Try do this. And then it's great because then you realize, hey, I can do more. I can achieve more.
You mentioned about skills. And I'm curious, what kind of skills that you look for?
Yeah. No, that's a great question. Yeah. One thing I really like about an organization like BCG is we don't do the typical thing, which is where we look at the CV and go like, oh, do you really have the experience and background in this space? Particularly for those who come from like undergraduate studies or graduate studies, right? To us, there's a foundational level of skill sets and capabilities that we're looking for, which is more generic in nature, right? So we look at things like your ability to problem solve, right? And you don't need to have like a degree in, economics or law or anything like that to be able to problem solve. That's a basic requirement. We want to see how your brain thinks, how you logically think through problems, right? So problem solving is a big part of it. Communication obviously is the other one, whether it's verbal communication or whether it's written communication, because as you can imagine, we deal with a lot of clients. So when you deal with a lot of clients, you need teams that are able to work closely with clients in a collaborative manner, communicate it with them, be able to clearly articulate, what you're trying to do, and ensure approvals are achieved, right? So communication is really important. And then things like practicality and effectiveness, which is basically getting the job done, right? Like, really practically being able to figure out what needs to be done, how to do it, solve the problem of how to do it, and then making sure that gets delivered. So those are the types of things that we look for. And, when we have interviews with individuals, those are the types of things that we will try and test during the interviews. And then obviously those are the skill sets that we will continue to develop and grow as individuals are within our organization.
Is consulting for everyone?
I think that consulting is a path that can help people to achieve their full potential and nurture and grow, but I don't think it's for everyone, right? And if it was, I don't think that would make sense, right? I think that there's different paths that individuals can take, and paths that can lead them to very exciting areas, right? So we have a lot of people that join our organization, they build those skill sets, and then, they don't want to stay in consulting forever, which is perfectly fine, right? Because, maybe their skill sets are not fully matched to our requirements, or maybe, they have greater ambition that goes beyond what consulting can provide, and we really work together with, our people. If they're searching for other things, we actually work together with them to help them find new opportunities. Because, for us, it's important to see how they progress and grow as well outside of the company. So we've had lots of people leave us and start up very successful businesses, become entrepreneurs in their own right, join their family businesses and really help their family businesses to thrive. Some of them go into the corporate line. Some of them, decide to open up an aquaculture farm or something like that. It's super exciting to see, right? And so I don't think it is for everyone, because I think it'd be a very boring world as everyone was consultants.
Absolutely. So now about BCG as an organization, you being the leader for Malaysia, and we know consulting in terms of an org structure and reporting structure. Can be very different from a typical organization, right?
Yes.
How does that work in your favor, this matrix kind of reporting as a leader?
So that's a great question. You are right. Consulting is not your typical structure, right? Because, for an organization like BCG, we operate in pretty much all countries around the world, right? That's a geographic footprint. But we also operate in different industry practice areas because we build very deep skill sets in certain industries, whether it's like, for me, I work very much in the public sector space. I've got colleagues that work in the energy space, in the healthcare space, financial services, so on and so forth. So they build very deep expertise in that space, and that's not geographic centric, right? We also have people that work in what we call functional practice areas. So that would be like strategy or marketing or procurement, operations, technology, so on and so forth. So you're right in pointing it's a super matrix structure because you can be a leader in a geographic area, or you can be a leader in an industry, or a leader in a functional practice, or a leader in an internal role as well in BCG. You could be like the head of finance, or so on and so forth. So it's very complex, but what's wonderful about it is it provides so much opportunity, right? Because there's not just one strict sort of hierarchy that's there. There's actually a lot of different ways you can progress, different options and flexibility which is available to you. So many people that you can reach out and talk to. You don't have to there's not just sort of one line. So that in itself makes it quite an exciting place to be, and really interesting because in some ways it's pretty entrepreneurial because they're all running their own businesses, right? And therefore they have that motivation and they're able to grow and build things, and you can opt to be part of this or part of that. There's so much flexibility in that regard. So yes, navigating it can be complex because you're like, who do I reach out to? But it just gives you so many opportunities and so many people to reach out and talk to, and so many ways you yourself can progress in the global space of BCG.
Right. You touched a point where you spoke about BCG being in many parts of the world.
Yeah.
Right. And you have different groups of people working in many parts of the world.
Yes.
Now, when it comes to culture, how do you build a culture that works well for BCG as a global firm? Because people come from different places, right? So how is that being managed?
So that's a great question. We are really a pretty big firm that operates in so many different countries. And as I mentioned, also in Southeast Asia, we operate in sort of 6 different countries in Southeast Asia. And so you could argue maintaining that culture and brand of BCG, even amongst Southeast Asia, can be a bit challenging. But having said that, I think the culture and DNA of BCG is quite clear. And that's sort of well established through, things, attributes like, how your leaders behave, right? Because how your leaders behave then filters down to your people. So that is number one. Secondly, in terms of the processes that we put in place, which again generate certain kind of behaviors within the organization, that is quite critical. And those main processes, whether I talked about sort of career development or so on and so forth, is quite established and quite sort of standardized across all parts of the world, right? So that is pretty clear. I talked earlier about we have some internal functions which are across BCG. So whether that's like things like recruiting, marketing, finance, right? So because it operates globally, right, and there are again certain standards and procedures which are cascaded down, it then it cascades down to the different geographies, and that sort of sets the tone of what the culture is for the organization, right? Having said that, there are sort of nuances which are geographic specific,
Right.
Obviously, it's just how it is, and we obviously want to respect that and allow that to flourish as well, right? So there are flexibilities and small nuances which is provided for different locations to be able to nurture and grow their own distinct culture as well, but I suppose bounded by the global BCG culture that is in place.
Very good. Very good. Now, talking about Malaysia now. Yeah. We spoke about talent, we spoke about culture. People in Malaysia, where do you see as talent that we are moving in the right direction? Malaysia.
I think it depends on how you define the right direction. So honestly, with Malaysia, in terms of talent, I actually think we underestimate ourselves and we sell ourselves short, actually. Maybe other culture in Malaysia is that we're very good at criticizing and being very critical of ourselves, which is fine because, through criticism and through reflection, you look to improve and you look at wanting things to get better, right? Which is a great thing to always do. But I actually do feel we also have been very hard on ourselves as well. And the reason why I say that is because I feel that Malaysian talent is actually pretty good, pretty strong, and pretty well regarded in the global world, right? You have the likes of Singapore, of which a lot of our Malaysian talent are actually there, right? A lot of some of the startups, some of the more interesting startups that have happened in Malaysia and around the region actually are, you have very prominent Malaysians that, are the founders are actually involved in helping those companies grow. We have a lot of great talent around the world which are contributing quite a bit. So I feel like we underestimate Malaysian talent. We have the ability of, our English is very strong. We're multilingual across lots of different languages around the world. Our regulatory base is very strong. Culturally, we're not very difficult culture to be able to sort of integrate well. And so that makes sort of the perfect combination of really good talent that is really well regarded globally. So I feel like we underestimate ourselves. I feel we underestimate our Malaysian talent. But having said that, going back to your question of are we on the right track? Are we heading in the right direction? I do feel that maybe as Malaysia, we don't necessarily we're a bit more reactive versus proactive. We don't sort of look as far forward. We don't probably sense as well and then prepare our talent as well as we should. I think we are a bit entrenched in legacy and how we do things in the past. And so there's more that I think we can do to sort of prepare our talent for the future and make sure that we are ready for things like changes in technology, AI, even climate and sustainability, although that probably has taken a bit of a hit. I do feel there's more that we can do to really make sure our talent is prepared, and we have the right talent to be able to make the most of those opportunities, which actually come our way. But we are also a very risk-averse culture, nation, and there's pros and cons in that. But I think we can maybe open ourselves a bit more.
You sit at the top of the office in BCG Malaysia. Can someone who's just joined BCG, say 3 months ago, can come and see you and speak to you?
Yes, anytime. So they can come at any time, but I also have recently put in place like open door sessions. So at least once a month, I'll block out like 2 hours of my time in the calendar, and I send it out to everyone in the office and say, this is my open door time. Anyone who wants to come by and just have a chat. It doesn't have to be anything serious. It doesn't have to be like work related. It can be anything. Can come and drop by and just have a chat with me, and tell me how you're feeling. And you'd be surprised, like I was a bit skeptical at first, but you'd be surprised the number of people who actually come drop by, and from saying, just highlighting their appreciation of what we're doing, or they come to me with a specific problem that they're hoping I can help with internally, or they are thinking about career progression. It's great for me to be able to have a chat with them and talk to them and help give advice and guidance where possible. The other thing, which I actively try to do, I don't do enough of, I need to do more of, is just walking around the office. Some people were saying like, oh, sometimes just don't stop at your floor, stop at one of the other floors and just take a walk around the office and just stop by and have a chat with people, ask them how they're doing, ask them, about their families and stuff. It can make a huge difference. And with a lot of these new joiners, as you said, you underestimate how important it is to them and how it can make their day for you to just take the time to talk to them.
In the world that we live today, changes and uncertainties has become a norm.
Oh yeah,
right?
A lot.
Right. So, as a leader, BCG Malaysia, how do you manage all these uncertainties? It happens like almost like every other month.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And you got to meet clients' needs. You got new problems.
Yeah. No, and honestly, I think this is at the top of mind for a lot of leaders around the world. Last year was a very interesting year because the sheer number of elections that were happening around the world was very interesting because it would fundamentally change and shift and cause a lot of question marks, right, around what's the path forward for a lot of businesses and organizations. And obviously, more recently, some of the recent shifts, whether it's in the US or in any of the other markets, has caused a lot of concerns and uncertainty. I think that number one, keeping abreast with what's going on is just super critical. And in an organization like BCG, it's wonderful because, as I said, we are around the world. We've got partners in almost every single country. And they will feed us information, right? They will be working on certain things, and then they will share those perspectives and insights with the rest of the partners around the world so that we'd have that information right at the tip of our fingertips that could then help us to then reach out to our clients to support them and help them sort of navigate through this uncertainty, right? So that is hugely beneficial for us, but also for our clients and the leaders that we really help support in the country itself. So that's on one side of things, just awareness and just being very aware of what's going on. The second part of it is then like, how do you then navigate that, right? Like, what are the options which are available to you, and how do you think through what does this mean and what the implications are? And I think for leaders, it's very important for them to always have that mindset of flexibility and adaptability depending on the needs, right? And planning out, different scenarios of what does this mean, what does this entail for the business, and what are the maneuvers that I can make to really manage that. I think the more proactive management and foresight you have of that, the better it would be for organizations. And it's the same with BCG, right? Like for myself, the last, 3-4 years have been filled, 5 years, has been filled with uncertainty, right? With the pandemic, post-pandemic, the uncertainty in terms of the multipolar world, tensions that's happening, but also, the benefits that can come from that as well, right? What does this mean for Malaysia, for Southeast Asia? What are the positives that can be taken from this that we can benefit from, right? Especially since this year Malaysia is the ASEAN chair, right? There's a lot that can come from that. Navigating all of that has been pretty challenging. Figuring out what should be done, which way to go has been challenging. But as I said, what's important is the flexibility and ability to course correct quickly. Every once in a while, for me, if things are not quite progressing as planned, a curveball gets thrown in, so on and so forth, the ability to then pause, take a step back, look at the bigger picture, think through, plan what needs to be done, and then adjust and course correct quickly is super critical. And I would encourage a lot of leaders to actively build that muscle and that capability, because I do feel as we move forward, it will just be more and more of an uncertain world. And strategically, we need to be able to shift as and when required.
What is the biggest challenge that you have?
At work or personally? Biggest challenge, I would say right now, you're talking about BCG or BCG Malaysia or myself? I think in BCG, because I wouldn't say it's a challenge per se, right? But the way BCG operates, as I mentioned, there's BCG globally, but then you've got BCG Southeast Asia, which operates across all these different countries, and then you have BCG Malaysia. I wouldn't say it's a challenge, but like for BCG Malaysia, for me, a key priority for this year is how to ensure Malaysia really is able to shine as the chair for ASEAN. To me, that's critical because it's an opportunity we shouldn't miss out on, right? We are the chair for ASEAN. There's a lot it's a very critical role to play. There's a lot of things that's happening in the world. The global south is, having a bigger share of the voice. What role can Malaysia play in that, right? How can we ensure that we can put ourselves on the map to be able to really support the region, but also the country as a whole? And what role can BCG Malaysia help to address that as well? So that to me is, I wouldn't say a challenge, but one of those things at the forefront of my mind at the moment.
In managing all these things, now coming back to your personal space now.
Oh, okay. Yes.
Right?
Yes.
How do you keep yourself balanced?
I always go back to, how do you define balance? And quite interestingly, I saw this video. So the former CEO of Pepsi, Indra Nui, she's an ex-BCG person and obviously a very prominent corporate leader. And there was a video that she said there is no such thing as work-life balance, right? And a lot of women sort of would agree with that, right? They do feel like achieving that right balance is quite challenging. And honestly, for myself, I would say the same thing. Balance is really a day-to-day struggle that you try to achieve, and you just try to optimize it in lots of different ways. When I think about balance, I think about, there's work on one side. I think about family, right? Whether it's your children or your parents or your grandparents or your extended family. And then there's your own personal achievements, personal ambitions, personal goals that you have, whether it's anything to do with like fitness or whether it's, arts or, academic education or anything like that. There's lots of different things. And so trying to achieve all of that, I think it's a daily struggle, right? Because you also need to figure out what's that right balance that works for you. And sometimes it's not, you just don't get to achieve that every day. But maybe in the year, depends on your time frame, in the year, maybe you're able to achieve that to a certain extent, right? And each person's definition of balance would differ. For myself, I think I went through a phase, especially once, within the first 2 years of being managing director and partner, or in any career stage, you have to sort of redefine what you mean by balance, right? And I had to redefine what I meant by balance, and then figure out what is the right mode that could work for me. At one point there was way too much work, and then that would issues related to like my health and my how I was feeling during that time, and then I had to sort of course correct and see like what can I do to ensure that there's I can achieve a better balance for myself to optimize that, right? So that's something still I'm figuring out. And if you were to ask me across the different parts, obviously we talked a lot about work, where I'm sort of the managing director and partner. I'm head of BCG Malaysia. I'm actually on a flex 80 model, which means that I'm only technically working 80%. Technically.
What does that mean?
That means that in a working week of like 5 days, I should only really be working 4 days. But I will take that in different ways in the week. So that's 80%. That's on the work side of things. On the personal side of things, obviously, I have my family. I have 4 kids. They're all within the age of between 4 and 10. I have to manage things as obviously their mother in terms of their schooling and, their activities, and making sure that I'm present in their lives as well. And also on top of that, trying to be sort of, good wife, a good daughter, a good granddaughter, so on, a good friend. And then on the personal side of things, I'm not young anymore. So, and as you get older, you must focus on your health and your fitness. So, I try to do things like I run. That's something I recently picked up after my last kid. So I do a bunch of sort of races throughout the year. I try to maintain that. I have in the past sort of cycled to be able to, again, maintain the fitness, do horse riding, so on and so forth. So I try to balance between all three. Sometimes I win in balancing, sometimes I lose. But it's a daily optimization exercise that I need to go through.
That's a consulting term.
Optimization, it is a consulting term. You are correct.
Right. So where do you get all this energy from?
Ooh.
Day to day, you have to be on high energy level. Working and thinking and directing people
Yeah.
while managing your KPIs, your deliverables.
Yes.
Making sure clients are satisfied, and you need to get new clients, new markets, right?
Yes.
So where does this energy come from?
Ooh. So again, I think that is something that I've had to reflect on over the past couple of years to try to figure out where does this energy come from. And you're right, because it really does suck a lot out of you, right? And you have to sort of course correct and figure out where you can energize yourself. And the one thing which I would say is also, as you age, it changes, right? And you start thinking like, well, how come last time I was so energetic? Like, it's so easy, I can do anything, right? But as you get a little bit older, you're like, why am I always so tired? Why am I so exhausted, right? And I think each individual needs to figure out where their source of energy is, and what's, again, that right balance between where you source your energy from and how you utilize that energy. And I feel like I didn't have that balance a couple of years ago, which is why I kept falling ill and falling sick, right? So maintaining that is really important. Now, going back to your question, source of energy, I think for me, it's with family, right? And having alone time to myself. I find that I'm very much an introvert, right? So I don't get energy from like being around lots of people. I every once in a while need to just be by myself with a good book in a quiet place, where I can just be zen and just let my mind go a bit quiet and not have to deal with all the hectic activity, right? So that to me is really important, filtering that into my calendar. Also making sure I get time with family. When I get time with family, I feel that's when I can re-energize. Sometimes the kids still exhaust me, but just having that time with them can really sort of make you feel a little bit more energized again. So I think, going back to your question, it's also important for people to figure out where they get those sources of energy, and then make sure they get the right balance of that in their calendar on a weekly basis so that they can maintain that balance a lot better.
Right. I mean, we look up to leaders, right, to get
Yes.
some inspiration, etc.
Yes.
But leaders do also look up to somebody else.
Yes.
So who do you look up to?
Gosh. So a number of different people. The first person which I would highlight as someone I looked up to was my grandfather. He's sadly passed now, but he had a remarkable career. And then he balanced it very well with his own sort of personal interests and also very much focusing on family. So he achieved a lot of things in life. He was a judge. He then became Lord President and Chief Justice, and then he then achieved greater heights beyond that. But he was able to do all of that plus really focus on what he was interested in and also focusing on his family while managing all these responsibilities. So he's the first person which I would highlight. The second person I'd highlight, one person who I've always looked up to is I consider her my mentor because she was head of BCG Malaysia way before me. And this is Datin Razali. I don't know if you know her, but she's a former head of BCG. And she was amazing because she was head of BCG Malaysia, managing director and partner, and she had 5 kids. Okay? She has 5 kids, of which 3 are triplets. And she does it with so much elegance and class. And, she's like this calm, amazing individual. And because she demonstrated that it could be done, then the rest of us thought, hey, if she can do it, maybe we all can do it. And if she can do it in such a classy and elegant way, we all can do it as well. So those are the 2 people who I would say have been sort of people that I've looked up to. And I do want to reiterate and stress, it is super important to have people that you look up to in your career. And so I also constantly look within BCG, look at my leaders and go, do I aspire to be them? Are there sort of skill sets and capabilities that I see that I wish that I had? And if I still have that, then yes, I want to be in that organization. But if you don't, then maybe that's not the right place for you to be.
Right. Our audience are made of leaders and leaders to be.
Okay.
What would you tell them?
Oh, so many things. I mean, okay, I think for me is there are lots of different types of leaders out there. But I feel the types of leaders that we need to have right now are leaders who have more longer term thinking in nature, right? My concern right now is that we have a lot of leaders that are very short term focused, very focused on achieving things that needs to be done now, which is good. You do need to be very focused on achieving things in the short term, but do not take your eyes on the long term. And what I mean by that is don't just think about what actions that are going to be done today and how it's going to impact things today, but focus on actions that's going to impact, or look at how the actions will impact in the longer term, right? If you're a leader in an organization, think about wanting to leave a legacy that enables the rest of the organization to succeed without you. That to me is a mark of a true leader, right? Somebody who's basically set everything in place so that the organization can succeed and thrive when you're no longer there. The rest of the employees, the people that you work with, they feel that they are empowered to do well without you. That to me is a mark of a really strong and true leader. So that's one part of it. The second part of it, and related to that is, therefore, I really would like to see a lot of leaders think more about succession planning, think more about like, who do I mentor to help to grow and nurture? What can I do to ensure that is all ready? Because for me as a leader, I would think I would have truly succeeded if I had been able to work with many people and they all succeed and become phenomenal leaders. That to me is far more rewarding than me myself being like, ooh, you are whoever you are. Like, I mean, it's very short term. Like, who cares? The legacy you leave is when you help nurture and grow others. And you nurture and grow them through different means and different ways, but having that sort of empathetic view, I think, is really important as well. Yeah.
Nurlin, thank you so much for your time.
Happy to be here.
It's an amazing conversation.
Thank you.
And hope to see you again soon.
Definitely. Thank you so much again for having me. It's always been a pleasure to be able to talk to you. And yeah, looking forward to hopefully further opportunities to talk more together. Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed our session. Thank you very much for being with us. And please do not forget to subscribe to our channel. I'm your host, Raj, signing off. See you soon.